She always makes me feel so good when you finish talking, so thank you. So the format we're going to go is is the same as Maria said. We'll have a 2-hour session. The first half will be the theory. We'll present the theory. Okay. The first half we will present the theory, and then after we present, we will take questions, and then we'll take about a 10-minute break. The second half will explore the practice of the topic that we have for today, and then after we finish the slides, we will then take questions. Now, your mics will all be muted. The way that you will ask questions will be through the chat box. Okay?
Yes, since this is our first online class here in Crotona, we are trying to keep this, simpler for our hosts. As the season goes on, then we may be able to add some more interaction. But for now, as Michelle said, let us communicate through the chat box, and then you can ask questions at any time in the chat box, and then we will address them, as Michelle said.
Right. Okay. I think that's all the logistical things, so we will go ahead and get started. All right, Richard, the PowerPoint is up and ready to go? Okay, so today we start with a cosmic perspective of human nature, and that's going to be the overall arching theme of this week, or this first week, and then Pablo will do a meditation retreat on Saturday that applies to this. The Secret Doctrine reveals to us a world of law and order, of progressive evolution, and purpose to existence. HPB tells us that in understanding universal principles, we can understand ourselves. So that's where we're going to begin.
Yes, and I think this is an important aspect of the Secret Doctrine that is not often explored, how all these teachings that are apparently about cosmic principles, things that happened in the past when the manifestation of the universe began and when the earth was formed and all these hierarchies of beings, how all of that can really be applied to our own minds, to our own consciousness, to our daily life. So in general, the Secret Doctrine is taken like a theoretical exploration of, let's say, esoteric cosmology and anthropology, but we will see how it is far more than that, and how it can become a very practical tool in our spiritual practice.
And this isn't something new that you invented or anybody's invented. HPB and the Masters tell us that to read the Secret Doctrine or study or ponder on the Secret Doctrine so that we can find the answers to ourselves.
Yes. Perhaps because of the nature of the Secret Doctrine, people feel more inclined to take it just as a theory, although as Michelle says, and we will see some quotes, the Masters and Blavatsky said that this book and theosophical literature in general has the aim of producing a transformation. So we need to explore how this can take place.
The truths and mysteries of occultism constitute indeed a body of the highest spiritual importance, at once profound and practical for the world at large, yet it is not as a mere addition to the tangled mass of theory or speculation in the world of science that they are being given to you, but for their practical bearing on the interests of mankind. And this is from Mahatma K.H.
So yeah, this is just what we were talking about. Yeah. They are stating that the purpose for which they gave these teachings is so that they can have a practical impact on humanity. And then they spent all these years working with Blavatsky to produce the Secret Doctrine. So evidently, the Secret Doctrine has to be thought in a way that can produce a practical impact in our lives.
Okay, the law of correspondence. First, a little disclaimer, the word man, you'll see in a few places here. Man, by its roots, means thinker, not the man versus woman that we have today. So if we think of the kingdoms of nature, the minerals, the plants, the animals, instead of man, we can just think of the thinkers, and then the devas, which would be the next kingdom. So the law of correspondence tells us that man is the microcosm. As he is so, then all the hierarchies of the heavens exist within him. But in truth, there is neither macrocosm nor microcosm, but one existence. Great and small are such only as viewed by a limited consciousness. So this last line here says our limited consciousness can only see things in a dual nature or with limits. So we see that, you know, the macrocosm is the grand scheme and the microcosm is the smaller scheme, but truly viewed from a higher consciousness, it's all just one essence.
We can see that nature puts a lot of care, let's say, in developing even the leg of a flea. And for us, a flea is something that we can disregard, and for us it's unimportant. But for nature, there is neither big nor small, as Michelle was saying. Every part of the cosmos is important. And there are these correspondences that Blavatsky proposes here, that in particular human beings seem to be a sample of the universe, in that every element that is present in the cosmos in a universal way is also present in human beings in a reflected way, let's say.
As in the inner, so is the outer. As is the great, so is the small. As it is above, so it is below. But there is but one life and law, and he that worketh it is one. Nothing is inner, nothing is outer. Nothing is great, nothing is small. Nothing is high, nothing is low in the divine economy. So this is the fourth one of the four basic ideas within the Secret Doctrine. Madame Blavatsky has her laundry lists, as I've heard them called, the three fundamental propositions, the four basic ideas, or I've seen them called four guiding principles, 5
proven facts,
6,
yeah, whatever.
Yeah, so there is a list that she uses. So this is one of those. And the divine economy in the Roman Catholic is just that. It's God's creation and the management of the world.
Mm-hmm. So this is all part of this law of correspondence that will be the foundation for our interpretation of cosmic principles in terms of a human being, because everything that is on the cosmos is reflected in human beings. Everything that is, on the planes of spirit is also represented on the planes of matter. So using this principle, we will show how we can interpret the Secret Doctrine in a psychological perspective, for example.
The laws which govern the whole govern also every part of it. As man is a little copy of the universe, is the microcosm, he is governed by the same laws which rule the greater macrocosm. Occultism teaches, therefore, of the secret laws and forces of the universe and man.
Yeah, so this is part of the same. We are providing several quotes so that you see this was a central thought in Blavatsky, and because of all these quotes, I think she expected us to do this kind of interpretation, a human interpretation of cosmic principles.
Okay, nature follows the same groove from the creation of a universe down to that of a mosquito. In studying esoteric cosmogony, keep a spiritual eye upon the physiological process of human birth. Proceed from cause to effect, establishing as you go along analogies between the birth of man and that of the world. Mahatma M. This is letter number 44. And it talks about that all nature is subjected to the same law of gradual evolution.
Yeah, so here it's very explicit, and later on in her esoteric instructions, Blavatsky would actually draw some explicit parallels between the manifestation of a cosmos and what we can call the manifestation of a human being. That would be the process of, developing, the embryo developing. So the master is saying specifically here, as you study the secret doctrine, esoteric cosmogony, he says, a spiritual eye. And Blavatsky many times would say, we need to read the secret doctrine with our intuition, with the spiritual eye, she also says. So use your intuition to see how that description that you see about how the world is created can also explain how a human being is developed. And this is just a hint so that we can do the same not only on a physical plane, like the physical development of the cosmos, the physical development of a human being, but also at the level of consciousness, the manifestation of consciousness, universal and individual.
So realizing the greater cycle will help us realize those cycles within us.
Yeah, and the secret doctrine gives us the clues, in explaining these cosmic principles, that those are clues to understand the individual development and constitution.
And she talks about, this is also studying the universals, studying the universal parts, and then the particulars kind of fall into place. Law in nature is uniform, and the conception, formation, birth, progress, and development of the child differs from those of the globe only in magnitude. The globe has 2 periods of teething and of hair growth. Its first rocks, which it also sheds to make room for new, and its ferns and mosses before it gets forest. And this is letter 67 from Mahatma K.H.
Can you read it again?
Yeah. Law in nature is uniform, and the conception, formation, birth, progress, and development of the child differs from those of the globe only in magnitude. The globe has 2 periods of teething and of hair growth. Its first rocks, which it also sheds to make room for new, and its ferns and mosses before it gets forest.
So here is another example of how we can work out these analogies. So of course we have to think in a symbolic way. The master is saying here, you can see the rocks that develop in the world. They are similar to the teeth or the hair, to the vegetation. And again, it's not that it's particularly relevant to do these analogies on the physical level. I think the master is pointing out to the physical level because it's more evident, and so that we start getting the sense of how to do this. As we are going to see throughout the course, this becomes very important when we start applying it to consciousness and to the spiritual life. So we need to learn how to do how to use these correspondences and apply, using our intuition, what happens in the macrocosm to that which happens in the micro.
So this is a skill, just like anything else that we do in our spiritual practice, that we have to start somewhere. So to start, as you say, with the physical, with the teeth and the hair, and see the correlations with the world at large, and then try and find the correlations in the wider cosmos. That's all a practice, a skill that we're learning. Because I think it's hard for us to sit in the unknown. So to go right to, or even to have our intuition just all of a sudden pop out of nowhere. So I think it's a small, gradual thing that comes on, and then there's a little bit of a leap where we're like, oh yeah, now I get it.
Yeah, and part also of what the master was doing there is he was in these letters talking to people that were scientifically inclined. So he was trying to show that there are certain patterns that are followed in nature and in human beings. There is a difference between the lower mind, which is concrete, that sees everything separate, and the higher mind that can see the commonalities, the patterns beyond the particular forms.
All right, the 7 keys of interpretation. Do you want to preface anything or just go right into it? There are 7 keys of interpretation to every symbol and allegory. That which may not fit a meaning, say from the psychological or astronomical aspect, will be found quite correct from the physical or metaphysical.
There are some statements that are strange in Blavatsky, and then she got some criticism for that. For example, she says that Neptune is not part of the solar system. And of course, from an astronomical point of view, Neptune is part of the solar system. But as she says here, later theosophists would say that actually what she meant is that the evolution of Neptune is not really connected to the evolution on the spiritual planes, to the evolution on the solar system. So as she says here, the esoteric philosophy can be interpreted on different levels. Sometimes all of these levels go hand in hand, and sometimes, as she says, what may not fit a meaning on one level, it does on another one. So she says when you study the esoteric philosophy, there are 7 meanings in any statement that you can take, either physically or astronomically, anthropologically. We will see all of that.
So processes that take place on the planes of spirit find themselves reflected in the planes of matter. Any given passage presenting esoteric teachings can be interpreted simultaneously different ways, as you just said, alternately describing processes or features relating to human beings, planetary systems, celestial beings, and so on. And these are the keys. Now, 7 is an odd number because we're going to show you that there are more than 7, but then we can arrange it in groups. So no one occultist, if he is true to his colors, can give out the meaning of all the 7 mysteries of wisdom, even if he himself is acquainted with all, which would be a marvel indeed. For those 7 mysteries in total are known thoroughly only to the masters of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I don't know if we included did we include all the names of the keys?
Mm-hmm. That's next. That's what I thought was here.
Okay, so Blavatsky talks many times in terms of 7s. And when we go to the actual, for example, keys that she mentions, as Michelle said, she mentions every now and then many more. But I think all that is explained by what she says here. Actually, only the masters know how to interpret the esoteric philosophy in all these different levels of meaning, with all these 7 keys. And then normally she says that in the Secret Doctrine she revealed and only very partially 3 or 4 keys. So we shouldn't expect to have a very clean list of 7 keys, how to interpret all according to these 7 keys. But we will see as we go along, we will focus on the psychological key of interpretation in particular.
So here are I think there are 18 divided into the 7 categories or 7 groups, I would say. So you have physical, psychological.
Physiological.
Oh, sorry. Let me put my glasses on. Physical, physiological, anthropological. Then numerical, geometrical, and arithmetical. Then psychological, psychic, moral, and mystical. Magical and creative, astronomical, cosmogonic, astrological. Theogonic, which is the celestial beings, and then metaphysical and spiritual.
So throughout the Secret Doctrine, you'll see that she says, from a or with the physiological key or with the moral key, or she will use these words all throughout the Secret Doctrine. Perhaps we can arrange them in those 7 categories. They seem to more or less fit, and all those different keys are like sub keys within the main one. It doesn't really matter, but the point here is that the different teachings in the Secret Doctrine can be interpreted from a physical point of view, numerical, psychological, etc.
Remembering that the key or the aim is not just to fill our heads with more knowledge or more information, but to stimulate our intuition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with the example that I gave about Neptune, you know, from the astronomical point of view, yes, Neptune is part of the solar system, but perhaps from the spiritual point of view, it is not. So we do need to keep this in mind as we study the secret doctrine. As we said in this class, we will focus on interpreting the secret doctrine with the psychological key, because that can become a practical tool for us.
The esoteric sciences have the double object of proving man to be identical in spiritual and physical essence with both the absolute principle and with God and nature.
Yes, let us continue to the next one.
You all know your earthly pedigree, but who of you has ever traced all the links of heredity, astral, psychic, and spiritual? None seem to know the indissoluble link connecting their souls with the one universal self.
Yes, so part of what Blavatsky is saying there in these two quotes is that from the point of view of the occult science, there is in us all the principles that are in the divine and in nature. And so she would ask in this writing, you know, when you think about your ancestry, normally what do you think about? Your body and your family. And she says, have you ever thought about where the other principles of your constitution come from? Because we have other non-physical principles. Right. So where do these principles come from? And that is a very important question, because after all, our parents, you know, give birth to us, and if they are present, that's great, but you can go on living without them being present, and you are not all that much affected. But the connection we have with the spiritual parents, let's say, or celestial parents that produce our other principles, is a connection that lasts throughout our lives, and this is reflected in astrology, for example. So we will see a little of this, but we are connected to the cosmos in an indissoluble way, as you said.
And one of the things that when I was studying for this class, I tried to really focus in on the whole quote and the questions that were asked. And what I found was it was a really uneasy feeling, because I couldn't give you a rote answer for the question. So I think one of the things that the secret doctrine allows us to do, or we could allow ourselves to do, is to be able to sit in that unknown without knowing the answers, knowing that as we grow in depth and scope, that these answers will get filled in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is the second half of that first quote. The esoteric sciences have the double object of demonstrating the presence in him of the same potential powers as exists in the creative forces of nature. And this is talking about the third object of the Theosophical Society, the latent powers of man and nature. So the first one was, let's go back. The first one was understanding who we are, our essence, where we came from, our pedigree, as this quote says. And then the second is to understand those powers that are latent within us.
Mm-hmm. And those powers are in us because of this identity with the cosmos. So the same powers that create, that manifest the universe, are within us, because, you know, just as your physical body, the properties of your physical body, chemical and physical properties, are the same as the properties of the physical matter of the earth. Similarly, your emotional, mental, spiritual properties are the same as those principles on a cosmic level. So the same powers that operate to generate a cosmos are within us because we are made of the same substance. That's what Blavatsky is saying in the first part of this quote. Therefore, it is important to know about these cosmic powers because they are in us.
And in a simple form, you know, when I think about creating something, I can't think of what I would create that was equal or, you know, a microcosm of the universe, but we do. We create life here. An artist creates with whatever medium they use, and our thoughts are things, so those are creating little entities.
Yes, all that is. As Michelle said, it's not that we can create a cosmos right now, but we create a microcosm. As she said, not only physically, our thoughts are creating these thought forms, these entities that are like little angels or demons that are out there influencing the world. We create our own lives with our perceptions, with our actions, with our responses. So all those powers are reflected in us. As we evolve and we can tap into the universal aspect of our individual consciousness, then those powers become universal also. This is what the masters or the Mahatmas can do. They can actually, let's say, manipulate cosmic forces because they have awakened to the universal aspect in themselves.
Man is a microcosm. As a whole, he contains every element that is found in the universe, the macrocosm. So just as when a supernova explodes, its essence, its particles become a solar system, it becomes a planet, and it becomes a human being. So just as that, we have that same ability or that same presence on Earth in our little worlds.
Yeah, that's a good way to think. You know, your physical matter right now, this was part of a star, because it is in the stars that the heavier elements are created in the universe. They cannot be created anywhere else. So your physical matter was part of a star. Similarly, your emotional, mental, spiritual substance is part of a celestial being. And we will see a little of that later.
As in a microcosm, man, or we'll say as in a microcosm, the thinker, so in the macrocosm or the universe. Every organ in the cosmos is a sentient entity, and every particle of substance is a cell. A nerve center which communicates with the brain stuff or that cosmic substance on the plane of divine thought, in which the prime ideation is produced.
Yeah, this is also part of that correlation that we are looking into. So we see that the physical body has organs. Blavatsky says, well, the cosmos also has organs. Of course, it's not that there is some organ floating.
A liver, a heart, a spleen.
Yeah, up there. But there is a quote where one of the masters say that the sun is the heart of the system. And not only metaphorically, in the occult view, the sun is not producing the energy that we think is producing. And the masters say that all this energy is coming from the inner planes, and the sun is the one that distributes that energy.
Just as a heart does.
Just as a heart does. So she's saying we can see both the human being as a cosmos and the cosmos as a celestial human being, let's say, the celestial man in the Kabbalah, for example. And there are organs, and just as our physical organs have living entities with their own consciousness, the cells, the cosmic organs have also living entities, the celestial beings. And we are all interconnected with all of this.
Okay, so this is just the background, but I took this off the internet, and it's called the cosmic web. So this is actually the connection between the galaxies, but we can see how it looks just like a connection with the nerves in our system.
Yeah, that looks pretty much like neurons all connected. So you can see how what Blavatsky is saying, that the cosmos, has these kind of connections and organs And we are connected to that too.
And this is science. Science is slowly coming around to this idea that there are some correlations. I would say it would be more of a physical or a physiological correlation than a spiritual.
From the point of view of
science,
yeah.
Right, but it's closer.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so now we're going to talk about some correspondences. This is just in general, to show those who are not sure with the natures, sorry.
Yeah, the theosophical
words for words for this stuff. So we have our highest, I can't even think, principle. Sorry. So our highest principle, Atman, is coordinated with the higher self, or also called the higher self. The soul, which is called in Sanskrit Buddhi, is the wisdom nature, or wisdom intuition, sometimes called. And then the ego, manas is the Sanskrit word, and that could also be mind, or this self-awareness of what is happening.
Yeah, so this is, you need to know this to understand the coming correspondences.
Right. So let us remember that when we speak of men, it is, let us remember when we speak of the thinker, it is a perfect analogy with the cosmos, that which we call Parabrahman, the absolute reality, and the first logos is Atman and Buddhi in man. Then the third logos is Manas.
Mm-hmm. So we will see in the next classes, the idea is basically she's saying that the absolute reality is a perfect analogy to the highest self in us, to Atman, to the higher self. Then the first logos is a perfect analogy to the principle of wisdom in us, Buddhi. And the third logos is a perfect analogy to Manas. Which means when you read in the Secret Doctrine about all of this, you are reading about your Atman, your Buddhi, your Manas. You are reading about your consciousness. So we will see it throughout the week. We will study what the Parabrahman is, for example, and then we will see how that throws light into what our higher self is, and then we will study what the logos is, etc. And this is how the Secret Doctrine we need to understand what the Secret Doctrine talks about, because only then we can apply it to ourselves. So in the week we will provide both things, an understanding of the cosmic aspect, and then how that can throw light on our individual consciousness.
And here's where we start here. So the highest in us, the spirit, Atman, higher self, correlates with the absolute reality in the cosmos. Soul, Buddhi, wisdom nature, correlates with the first logos. And ego, manas, self-awareness or mind, coordinates with the third logos. And I always get, not upset, but the second logos is always left out. And I want it a nice progression. So the second logos, if what helped me was to remember that the second logos is more like a bridge between the first and the third. So the bridge, or the area, the space between the soul and the ego, is where the second logos would fit in there.
Yeah, probably Blavatsky many times talks about Buddhi Manas as a principle. So that Buddhi Manas would be the second logos. As we will see, the second logos is where there is a polarity, two things in one. So Buddhi Manas...
Right, not a duality.
Not a duality, but this polarity, the two things in one, and Buddhi Manas are these two principles working together. So it could be fit there. Blavatsky in her writings, many times she skipped the second logos. She would talk about the first and the third, because as we will see, the first is unmanifested in the world of unity, and the third is manifested in the world of duality. And there is a bridge in between. So we will see all of this and see how that applies to our consciousness, to the practice of meditation, to our daily life, etc.
Students will now better comprehend the necessity of first studying correspondences between our principles and the direct roots of these in the universe.
Mm-hmm. So that's the foundation for this class. This is a reason why it's important to understand all these principles and the correspondences, so that we can apply it.
Right, that they're, the three higher are not different from the three highest in us is what. Okay, so, we did good because that's the end of the first half.
All right, so now we can go to questions, answer, and comments, and a response, to what we are proposing here. So basically, this is the introduction for the class. In the second part, we will talk more specifically about how to apply these correspondences. But basically, this idea of the macrocosm and the microcosm and the correlation between the two.
And I can go back to
the slides.
To slides if that will help.
Okay. Ed Moskowitz asks, what is theogonic or theogonic?
The celestial beings.
Yeah, I think theogony is something that the Greeks used to the word that they used. Just as cosmogony, that last part comes from Genesis. So you could say cosmogenesis or theogenesis. So theogenesis has to do with the manifestation and development of celestial beings, or theogony is another way of saying it.
Theogony's in the dictionary, theogonic is not. But it's the same.
So there are examples in which, for example, Blavatsky talks about the war in heaven. And there is an allegory about the war in heaven. And that war in heaven can be interpreted in different ways. The typical way it is interpreted is from the theogonic point of view, a war between the angels. We have in Christianity the war between the angels and the fallen angels, etc. You can interpret that anthropologically because these angels are our souls. So there is a group of souls that incarnates, another group of souls that refuse to incarnate. But you can also interpret this as the inner war that the candidate to initiation has to face between the higher and the lower nature.
And even on a smaller, I hate to say lower level than that, it's the fight we have all the time with our conscious, with what to do and what not to do. So that's bringing it on all the levels.
She also mentions when at the beginning of the solar system the planets are trying to get to, are being formed, there is a war in heaven because the bigger planets absorb the smaller ones and,
And jockeying for space.
Exactly. They are fighting to establish themselves in a particular orbit. So this is what she means that esoteric teachings, because there is similar patterns applying on different levels, then the esoteric teachings can be interpreted as allegorically describing processes on all these different levels. So you need the keys, the key of interpretation to see what that means on a physical level or at the level of celestial beings, etc.
And we do this somewhat when we look at, say, the Bible in a wider light, not just literally, but when we look at it from a more allegorical standpoint, we're using a key.
Yeah, the early church fathers, they used to say there are three levels of interpretation in the Bible: the literal, the moral, and the spiritual. So they had this idea of three keys. Blavatsky talks about 7 different keys. Again, we are going to focus on one of those keys, that is the psychological one.
Ready?
Okay. Fiona Craig comments, I love the explanation of our connection to the spiritual universe.
And we will see that very clearly as the class proceeds. And I think that's one of Blavatsky's, Blavatsky says, in that, go back to the slide about the aims of the occult science, the esoteric sciences.
This?
But let's go with
one.
A. Yeah. So you see, proving that we are identical in spiritual and physical essence with the absolute and with the divine, as it expresses in nature, and then proving also that in us there are the same potential power. So she says that this is the object of the esoteric sciences. Normally when we think of spirituality, it tends to be an individual affair. I am trying to live the right way so that I can get to nirvana, heaven, or whatever it is. Blavatsky says, if you are going to understand the world from an esoteric point of view, these are the foundations. You are not different from the cosmos. All the celestial beings, all the angels are inside of you. You are part of all of this.
And part of it is you have to go beyond the senses. In order to read the esoteric sciences or the esoteric literature, you have to go beyond what your five senses are, go beyond.
Yeah, what they bring. That view that we are individuals isolated from the world comes from what the senses bring. So we will see that in detail.
Ed Moskowitz says, there is no creation, only transformation. And then he adds, Atman is Brahman.
Words.
Yeah.
Words.
Yeah, and HPV many times complained she would use creation and then she would, many times complain.
Oh, wait, no, it's not that.
Yeah, by that we don't mean this or that,
Right. So creation, manifestation, emanation, what did Ed use?
Transformation.
So in this, at least here, all those are pretty much being used in the same.
Synonyms.
Yeah, synonyms.
Atman is Brahman, or you can say Atman is Para-Brahman. That's exactly what Blavatsky is saying in that particular quote. Go back to the quote. Lower. Ahead.
Sooner?
The one with the correspondences. Yeah.
Oops, there we go.
Yeah, go the previous one where HPV says. So that which we call Para-Brahman is Atman, she's saying there, and the first logos is Buddhi. So Blavatsky is coming from that point of view. Atman, which means your real self, is Para-Brahman, which means the absolute reality. So that means your real self is the absolute reality, and we will see this at length. It's not that yourself is somehow different from reality, and we have to perceive truth as if truth was something different from us. Your true self is the ultimate reality. That's what Blavatsky is saying here.
So the differences or the separation is only after with our senses, in the realm of our senses.
Yeah, it seems that we are separate and limited. The senses are bringing that illusion. Again, we will see all these throughout the week.
The last question I have here is from Carolyn Wayland. She asks, since you're defining things, define logos, please.
We had a discussion about this because logos is used both as a cosmic word and also as a human word, a human word. So, but it's more of a correlation. So go ahead.
We'll look at that tomorrow in particular. But the word logos comes from the Greek, and it has been translated in different ways, like word, just as in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word. That in the Gospel of John, that is written in Greek originally, or at least the originals we have, and the Greek says in the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. So it can be translated as word, and that has a meaning in the sense that word is creative. The word, is creative. It is also translated as intelligence. That's why, as Michelle said, we can talk about the universal intelligence or our intelligence. The manas is the logos in us. That's why here Blavatsky is saying, that the third logos is manas. The manifested logos, the manifested intelligence, is expressing through our own minds. So that's why the manifested intelligence, or the third logos, is manas. So intelligence, order, also sometimes logos is translated as order.
And the distinction will be easier to see as we go on. Yeah.
Yeah, what the
because that was
logos-
one of my questions as I went through this. You know, I was seeing it, putting it side by side, so to see, you know, where the true definition was.
Yeah, so what the logos is in theosophical literature, we have the whole class tomorrow will be about the logos, so, or the next one. I think tomorrow
Tomorrow's
is
absolute.
the absolute. So the following
Thursday
one
is
will be about the
lo-
logos.
Yep. That's it? Okay, so since we have a couple minutes, we talked about, or we mentioned how all the principles are in us, the thinker. And so can you just talk more about that?
Like the lower principles too or something?
Yeah, you know, in the angel kingdom, the
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, the idea is that it seems that human beings are specifically, are more of a complete sample of the universe than other kingdoms, in the sense that human beings is where heaven and earth kiss. You know, this is, I think, from the Kabbalah or somewhere.
kiss, he said
Kiss, yeah. In us, there is the presence of both the higher and the lower in equal terms, and that's why we have conflict, inner and outer conflict. Celestial beings don't have a lower nature. Pre-human kingdoms are in the process of fully awakening the lower nature, and the higher nature is still waiting for the lower nature to be fully developed. So it is only in human beings that you have the higher and the lower intricately connected.
intertwined.
Yeah.
Like in the symbol of the TS, the two triangles in the middle, they're not one laying on top of the other, you know, one being spirit, the other being matter. They're intertwined because that's where we are in this stage right now, or this evolutionary stage of humanity, is our higher nature is entwined with or tangled with our lower nature.
Yes.
And that's the battleground of
Yeah, so that's why the human beings in particular are the microcosm. Animals are not the microcosm in the sense that they don't have all the principles awakened yet. And celestial beings are not the microcosm either, because they have transcended the lower principles. So human beings in particular are a small sample of the totality of the universe. Eventually we will move on as a celestial being and leave behind the lower principles. So that's, I think that's something important. Of course, then macrocosm and microcosm is used in different ways by Blavatsky. She would say, we are the macrocosm of the lower kingdoms of nature, and by lower, it's not that they are less than us, it's just in the process. You know, a child is not less than an adult, but in a process of development, you know, philosophically speaking, it's a lower stage. We are talking in that sense, not with any moral.
So did you say that animals are a microcosm?
Yeah, animals, vegetables, etc.
The other kingdoms.
The other kingdoms are the microcosm, and we are the macrocosm when you look at the kingdoms, the physical kingdoms on Earth. And she says, you know, this is important because always the microcosm is trying to follow the macro. So whatever we do is influencing how animals act and how they feel, etc. So she would use, in a looser way, macrocosm and microcosm.
But as an analogy.
Yeah, as an analogy. But when used in a technical way, human beings are the microcosm of the whole universe.
And it gives us a responsibility too. If we understand how we interact and how we influence and how we create, well, then we have to kind of take better measures or better steps towards integrating, you know, both the lower kingdoms and the higher kingdoms, so that we're creating something that's harmonious.
Yes, in her esoteric instructions, Blavatsky talks about how the different celestial beings, they emanate lower hierarchies of beings. So the highest celestial beings will emanate a whole, you know, let's say, I don't know, part of their hierarchies, like a whole group of celestial beings that will act on a lower plane. And then those will emanate other group of celestial beings that act on a lower plane.
So are you saying that then the hierarchy of the celestial beings, these are the microcosms of the celestial beings?
Yes,
So
you can say that in the way we were talking about. Now then she connects it to human beings and say, we too emanate lower celestial beings, which are our thought forms. Our thought forms, compared to us, they are a lower form of intelligence because they are, they last for far less than a human being does. They have a far more limited intelligence.
They're more brute.
And more limited. My thought form about something is just about that. But she says, in the same way that the celestial beings emanate hierarchies, we are doing that all the time in a similar way. So you can see there also the correlation.
Okay.
Any
other questions?
Comment
comments?
or question before we take a break?
Okay. So
Right,
we'll
very
go
good.
ahead and take about a 10-minute break. We'll come back about 5 after.
Yeah, 5 after.
5
You know,
after 11
hello?
California time. So yeah, 10 minutes is probably easiest. And then we'll go on with the exercises. We can start with a few questions if some come up during the break.
Mm-hmm.
All
Very
right.
good.
Okay,
We'll
thank
see
you.
soon.
Thank you.
Hello?
Okay, welcome back. We're going to start with the exercises, exploring them together, but I think we have a question first.
Yes. This is from Mayari.
Mary.
Mary,
Oh, Mary.
it is
sorry.
Mary, yes.
Who asks, astrology was mentioned. Will this topic be talked about? If not, can you recommend a source for charting personal astrology within the context of theosophy?
No, we are not going to talk about astrology. And Blavatsky draws some parallels in her esoteric instructions, but not much. Basically, the idea is that there are the seven primordial celestial beings that are manifested, as we are going to see in one of the classes. They are like the nursery, the womb, within which our divine sparks develop. So each of us develop within one of these celestial beings. And all the other celestial beings are participating in the constitution of our being, let's say. So some celestial beings will provide our emotional body, our mental body, etc. And these seven primordial beings are associated to planets. Planets are like their physical manifestation. So this is the foundation for astrology. The activities of a particular celestial being, or Blavatsky would call them planetary spirits, for example. The activity of the planetary spirit that is connected to Venus, that is connected in us with one of our principles, and Blavatsky organizes them a little different from the regular astrology. She says Venus is connected to the higher mind, not to the emotions, as regular astrology does. So she would say that because this planetary being is connected to our higher mind, the activities going on there affect our higher mind or our emotions. But she didn't develop much this.
And it's probably not in one place.
No, the little that she says is in the esoteric instructions. Right. There are other people who they say that they develop an esoteric astrology. I haven't looked into that too much to have an opinion, but my impression, and I did study astrology for a while, my impression is that the true esoteric astrology is esoteric, meaning never published, and has to do with these cosmic principles. And there may be interpretations of astrology that are more esoteric than the regular one, but I have the impression that HPB didn't elaborate on that because it's truly esoteric. It's something that is not publicly taught. So yeah, we are not going
It's
to
not
look
written
into
down
that.
in a book.
Blavatsky said true esoteric teachings are never written down. They are passed orally, and even that, very seldom. True esoteric teachings are given on the inner planes, so yes. Mm-hmm.
I have another question. This is from Sue Prescott, who asks, could the second logos mean Buddha Mamas?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So
that's.
it's that bridge.
Mm-hmm. And we will see a little more about that as we proceed with the class.
Okay? All right, here we go. So the exercises that we're going to give in a nutshell will be about using those higher principles in the cosmos to apply them to ourselves so that we can get out of our lower nature where we feel separate into a place that is more limitless.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the first proposition. So this is where we talk about the three fundamental propositions that Blavatsky gives in The Secret Doctrine. So the first proposition establishes that the absolute reality is an eternal, boundless, and immutable space within which the cosmos appears and disappears. One aim of meditative expansion in consciousness is to counteract the body-centered perspective in which we live our daily life. So the first fundamental proposition proposes that there's this unity, this underlying unity, and this essence from which everything, I forgot what Ed said, transforms, from which everything transforms.
Yeah, so remember that she says, the absolute reality is your true self. So when we read in The Secret Doctrine, there is in the first fundamental proposition that there is a principle that is omnipresent, eternal, boundless, immutable. Read that, taking it as describing your true self. This is what you truly are. And then she compares that with space. So in meditation, instead of identifying yourself with this particular body that is in this particular point of space, what the fundamental proposition is saying is that your true self is the space without boundaries, as Blavatsky says, boundless. So can you in meditation transition from that point of view, I am here now, this is my body and this is what I am, to a sense of spaciousness, of boundlessness, of eternity. And we will see a few examples of that.
From this spaciousness originates a substratum, from the practice of the space, of getting into the spaciousness, originates a substratum of memory which does not cease in dreaming or waking. Its manifestation is courage. With memory of universality, all dread vanishes during the dangers and trials of life. So it starts this.
Where is that from?
Oh, sorry. This is from the diagram of meditation, Blavatsky's diagram of meditation.
Yeah.
That's okay. So in our practice, with the practice of in our meditation, in our sitting meditation, trying to get to this expansiveness, trying to be the spaciousness, what it creates is a ground, a network from which we can draw this courage, because courage is a higher order virtue, and it comes from our higher nature. So we can't tap into that courage until we have a framework or a ground, or as she says here, a substratum from which we can work. And when we do that, and when we're able to manifest this courage or use that courage that's already there, all dread vanishes. And And just even on a daily basis with the anxieties we have, this is a great encouragement for dealing with what we need to deal with in our regular life.
Yeah, if we look, the sense of fear comes from our identification with this fragile, limited, self. So when we think we are separate and fragile, as I said, both in our ego and in our physical body, then fear comes from there. What Blavatsky says is that as we do this kind of meditation that she recommends in the diagram, for example, of trying to identify ourselves with the spaciousness, little by little you begin to identify yourself with the eternal, the boundless, the immutable. And that's what produces the absence of fear that we call courage, because we are less and less identified with the fragile aspect of our nature.
We find a similar statement in Light on the Path. Live neither in the present nor the future, but in the eternal. This giant weed, the personal ego, cannot flower there. This blot upon existence is wiped out by the very atmosphere of eternal thought. I just wanted to mention, I think we do that when we're anxious or nervous or worried or angry. Right now, we tend to try to distract ourselves, or we change things. As soon as we get into a space where we're helping others, or we go outside and we expand from where we are, we're stepping into that spaciousness on a very material level. So if we can apply these ideas from these quotes, or even the idea that we're connected or we are the spaciousness, even those little acts that we do regularly on a daily basis, we can use to be food for a higher order of meditation or a higher order in our spiritual practice.
Yes, and we have to work for this, in the sense that basically, what does it mean that you are the ultimate reality? We have to work with this in different ways. In a meditation, you can sit down and try to imagine and try to understand what the implications are. If I'm eternal, then nothing that happens to my body is all that relevant. It is relevant. This seems like a paradox, but suppose you are playing a game or a sport. While you play the game, you are engaged with it. You respect the rules of the game. You are trying to win. You are afraid that you are going to lose, but all in the context of understanding this is just a game. You know that if you lose in the game, you are not betting or anything, gambling. If you lose in the game, it's just a game. Nothing happens to you in real life.
In a healthy way to play the game, because there are some people that get drawn into it, and the same way
it becomes their life.
Whole life.
And suck the fun out of the game.
Definitely. And so then losing becomes an attack on your own personality.
Yeah.
And we do the same thing with simple things that we do. If I fail something at work, or I make a mistake, or I'm not as good as I think I should be, if we get entangled with that and don't realize that those are just games pretty much on a daily basis, and that we're not the spaciousness that we can switch.
Yeah, because in the same way that we can play a game and have fun and even learn things from the game, or develop, if it is a sport, you get healthier. You can do it that way, or you can do it in the way Michelle was describing, and then the game becomes a problem for you. In a similar way, we as a divine spark are eternal. Nothing, ultimately speaking, nothing that happens to the body is really happening to the soul. The soul may learn from it, the soul may have some experience, but we have had thousands of bodies in the past, and we will have thousands in the future. Now, does it mean this body doesn't matter? No, this is a game we came to play for a purpose. As Michelle said at the beginning, the Theosophical tradition says there is a purpose why we are going through this. But if we can retain that point of view, that ultimately speaking, we are eternal, we are immutable, we are, this all-embracing principle, how would life look from that perspective? These are all the things we have to work with. Imagine, meditate on it, try it in daily life. In this way, the secret doctrine can become a transformational, tool because it's telling you about your real nature.
Right, and just as every time you kept saying, it's not real, it's not, who we are, and my mind kept going, but it hurts. It hurts, and I don't like it. Mm-hmm. But when I put it into the analogy of a sporting event, how many times, do we do a sporting event and we get hurt? We sprain an ankle, we bump our heads, there are some serious things that can happen. But when we understand the nature of the game, we understand that hurt, that ache, that pain is part of that. And so for me, to look at that on a regular basis, yes, I am this spaciousness, and yes, I am going to have these things that hurt me. I can then use that as like a logical argument until I can feel it in my cells.
Yeah, because this is an important point. During the transition, it's like you are playing a game. You don't know that is a game. You think that your life depends on it. So whatever happens in the game is going to produce real anxiety, real feelings in you, because you think your life depends on the game. Similarly, our soul, when the soul incarnates, it forgets its true nature, that is eternal, always in bliss, etc., and gets identified with the game of life. And then the soul, or that false understanding, generates all these feelings, which are real, but they are based on a misconception. How would you experience life if you had positive proof that you are eternal, that you are beyond the body, that you are always in a state of, your true home is a state of bliss? If you were completely, sure of that, how would you experience life? In a far lighter way, again, with the responsibility of engaging, but many things that cause real pain would stop producing pain. So that's part of what, in the transition, we are neither there nor here. We are trying to get out of,
once again, that battleground.
Yeah.
We're in that quasi area that we're not fully here and we're not fully there. And so it's just a back and forth struggle.
It's that struggle, yeah.
Right, but I think that's part of that back and forth struggle, I think, strengthens our spiritual muscles so that, as we continue to do it, we're taking a step towards being in that space on a regular basis.
Yeah,
or at least having it, or at least having it to access when we need.
Yeah, having it available there. And you see, when people develop wisdom or love, real love, then many things that bother many people, those things don't bother these people any longer. You can see it, that this is how it works. A lot of the suffering that we experience will just go away by developing wisdom, by realizing little by little our true nature. As Blavatsky says, courage is a natural manifestation of this. Along with that, there are many other manifestations, but basically, you see that the true pain that we feel in life, it begins to be irrelevant.
Right, and I don't know if it always goes away, but to me it lessens to a manageable point. So it's not a crisis after crisis after crisis. It's like, oh, okay, that's going on. I'll do this, this, and this.
Yeah, eventually, even, for example, we have a story of Ramana Maharshi, a sage in India, that he was even physically beaten. There were some robbers that came in the ashram and they just started beating Ramana. And the disciples were there and were about to react, and Ramana said, don't do anything, this is their dharma, let them do whatever they have to do. And he didn't mind it, and then they asked him. Actually, they broke, I think, his leg or something. I don't remember. And he said, "Well, I was just doing some puja." Puja can be interpreted as a word for a spiritual exercise, but also is related to being hit. So, in these, of course, are extreme examples. In enlightened beings, even physical pain is irrelevant. So it's not that we should expect that to happen with us, but we can see how we see examples where even physical pain, let alone psychological pain, disappears or becomes just a sensation as when we realize our true nature.
So that was the first fundamental proposition, was based on the essence or the nature of unity. The second fundamental proposition gives us a clue as to how we may work through restlessness. This proposition describes two aspects of reality: space as a boundless plane, immutable and eternal. So she goes back to the unity. And then the incessant manifestation and dissolution of numberless universes within that space. So it's the coming and the going.
Mm-hmm. So, for example, do you
No, I think the next one
want to comment? What's the next one?
gives an
Okay,
explanation.
yeah. Just let's go to that.
In order to realize our true nature, we must cease to identify ourselves with the contents of consciousness, these feelings, thoughts. I am the thinker. This is all there is. And understand that we are the immutable space, the container of all this movement. When the inner movement is quietly observed, without identifying oneself with it, the sense of me is eventually lost and is replaced with a spontaneous sense of being the space that encompasses the psychological movement. In this state, there is no feeling of I am this or that, but only one of pure awareness without any label or demarcation.
So this is, if you are familiar with the fundamental propositions, the second fundamental proposition is talking about the coming and going of cosmos or universes within that unity, within that space. Periodically you have a cosmos coming in and out, and when the cosmos is there, there is a lot of activity, and then the cosmos goes away and no activity, and again. So when interpreted from a psychological point of view, all this cosmic activity that happens in the universe is reflected in our psychological activity, all these thoughts, emotions, this or that. So the second proposition says, even though there are cosmoses coming and going, the space, let's go to the previous one, like this space, the boundless space, always remains there, immutable, untouched. So the same in meditation. We may have thoughts, emotions coming and going, but if we can identify ourselves with the space that remains there, not with the content of consciousness. If I think I am a thought, I am changing from a positive thought to a negative, a happy to a sad. But the sense of being the container is always the same there, steady, no matter what comes or leaves. We are just like embracing it, but not getting entangled with them. And that's what the second proposition says, when applied to a psychological level.
So this is also known as the law of cycles, and if we were to watch our psychological level, we would see that our moods kind of do have a certain cycle within them, so that's always good to know. And then the second part at the end where it says, in this state there is no feeling of I am this or that, but only one of pure awareness, without any label or demarcation. And the simplest way to practice this on a regular basis is to be able to watch without labeling. Oh, this flower is nice. See if you can purposefully walk around your house or outside and just notice and just be aware and let kind of the flower come in to your space and go out, and just as everything else does, without putting any emotion or any attachment to that flower.
Yeah.
That's how we create a little space. Then we can try and do that with our emotions. Not, oh, I'm angry right now, or oh, I'm anxious, or I'm worried, or even, oh, I'm happy. if we can just find the space, the time, the energy to just give it some space. Sorry, I keep using the same words.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that doesn't mean not to feel. It means not to label and get entangled with the feeling. You know, seeing a beautiful flower may produce a sense of joy, of beauty, and as Michelle says, you let it be, and then as you keep moving, you know, it goes away and something else comes in. Normally we go like from feeling to feeling. We are, you know, like constantly entangled with the response to the environment. So in this exercise, to practice the second fundamental proposition would say, in the midst of all this happening, can you step back and be the boundless space?
okay. So the third fundamental proposition establishes, once again, the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul, going back to the first fundamental proposition and the unity, the essence, the eternalness of it. Then the obligatory pilgrimage for every soul, a spark of the former, through the cycle of incarnation or necessity in accordance with the cyclic and karmic law, in order to have an independent conscious existence.
So HPB there says again, from a cosmic perspective, she says, once a universe comes into being, a cosmos is developed or manifested, then the souls get into this cosmos and get into a journey. The purpose of this, of which is to develop self-consciousness, basically, self-awareness. So we can take again life in this way. If this is what happens cosmically, then that's also the purpose of our daily life. Because many times we tend to think that to be spiritual we have to retire from life. But that's not how Blavatsky describes the universe. The one being that manifests the universe, the Logos, doesn't manifest the universe just to abandon it. It manifests the universe to be engaged with it because there is something that needs to be developed or awakened. So similarly in our daily life, our little cosmos that is daily life is necessary for us. It's necessary to be able to develop this spiritual self-awareness. Everything that happens will be regulated by the cyclic law and the karmic law. We need to have the confidence that there is an order behind. And then live from that perspective.
Right. And this is a very theosophical idea here, is to stay in the world, stay engaged in it, and that is your training ground. That's where your spiritual muscles will be worked and your skills honed, you know, so to do more deeper work later on.
Mm-hmm. So this is what we are showing here. You know, this is a very general approach. In the next classes we will go more specifically, but this is just an example of how we can take the three fundamental propositions that normally are interpreted about cosmic processes, because that's the language that the Secret Doctrine uses. If we remember all the quotes that we read, that the Master says, keep an eye on, when you study cosmology, keep an eye on a human being. Or, you know, there is a perfect analogy, Blavatsky says, between the cosmos and the human being. If we keep that point of view, then can we read the propositions in connection to us as being, you know, this is a description of us and our own life.
And once we start from there, you know, so today we've given you these new ideas. Okay, look at the relatively new. Mm-hmm. Look at the Secret Doctrine, and this is how you apply it to your life. So we've given the chunk of information that you need. So from here we can give a couple ideas. But I think the main point is that if you stay with these ideas and stay with this information and try small things, I think what happens is other ideas open up to you. Because I think it's hard if we're waiting for a laundry list of things to do and how to do them. There's, especially from this point of view, there's an innate way within us that these ideas or these questions that we have open up and the answers come from a spontaneous, that's that substratum.
Yeah, that's what Blavatsky says, how we should study the secret doctrine, to stimulate our intuition. We will give plenty of examples in the coming classes how to apply different aspects of the secret doctrine in this psychological way. But as Michelle said, you have the whole secret doctrine, and there are many aspects of the secret doctrine that can be applied psychologically. Of course, not only the secret doctrine, we are working with this book for that purpose, but in general, theosophical teachings about cosmic processes can be applied, individually.
The voice of the silence reminds us, the seeds of wisdom cannot sprout and grow in airless space. To live and reap experience, the mind needs breadth and depth and points to draw it towards the diamond soul. Seek not those points in the realm of illusion, but soar beyond. Search for the eternal and the changeless beingness, mistrusting fancies, false suggestions. But we have to start in the realm of illusion because that's where we are. And once we realize, we name it, we realize that this is a realm of illusion, we realize why it's the realm of illusion, and we realize that our senses are directly keeping us there.
And we will have a class dedicated to the sense of illusion and all that.
Yeah, so once we have that kind of organized in our mind, then we can take the next step, and that is the study of the secret doctrine. And then from there, in our meditation, in our daily activities, we can start pulling out little jewels or little, and I say this only because I'm not a scholar, so I would never go to the secret doctrine and say, okay, look I'm going to find all this stuff that was really going to help me with my daily life. But as I see it more and more and take it bits and pieces, I see the whole world that's within just this little, I see the macrocosm within the microcosm, and just piece by piece, if I trust that it's one stepping stone that I need after the other.
Yeah. So in this quote is connected to what we were saying about the need for experience. Theosophical tradition doesn't agree with the idea that to be spiritual we should go away from life, because we need to live and reap experience. But for that, the mind needs breadth and depth, which is similar to the idea of space. You have to be open to receive the experience. And also aims that go to the diamond soul. This is a scripture that, or
Buddhism?
Yeah, it comes from a Buddhist tradition. So this is Tibetan Buddhist, and this is how they talk often. For several reasons, the diamond is relatively indestructible, just as our souls. That can be one of the reasons. But basically, go out, live, but live with this spaciousness and with aims that point you to the eternal. And in that way, mistrust the suggestions that come from your senses that tell you you are separate, you are this little thing, you are transitory. Mistrust all that and try to perceive your higher nature as you go through life.
And I always think breadth as in increasing in knowledge or information and intuition, and then depth is what we do in our meditation. We're able to go deeper into the spaciousness. Okay, so that's all we.
That's the end of the.
Right. Then we go to this.
Oh, okay. Then let us.
Yeah.
So the idea here was to present how you can apply the three fundamental propositions just to ease you into this idea of correspondences. So are there any comments or questions?
I have one question here from Sue Prescott. Can you give us the source of the quote after your slide of the second propositions?
Wrong way. I thought it was the, Yes, this right here.
That's part of the book.
Thank you, Sue. So, yeah, it's from Pablo's new book, Approaching the Secret Doctrine, an Introduction to Cosmogenesis. I'm always nervous about giving dates out, but it should be out at the beginning of 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of, we are presenting here, of course, in a book you can delve much deeper than in a verbal communication. But the idea in the book, there is a little more elaboration on how to apply the fundamental propositions to the process of meditation. Because you have the first one that says what you really are is this space, boundless space. But within this space, there are things coming and going. So in our case, it would be thoughts, memories, sensations, etc. So what we need to do in the second proposition is, because Blavatsky says, within that immutable space, there are these transitory things coming and going. So the immutable space is the eternal part. So when we are in meditation, as we mentioned, you need to try to remain as aware of being the space. So how do you do that? In practical terms, normally you just start watching the thoughts and emotions without labeling them, without getting entangled with them. And little by little, your consciousness is like, it's normally glued to the things, the content of our consciousness. As you just watch them without reacting, it naturally comes and starts having the sense of being the space. And then, from that perspective, you can engage with life, which is important. Life has a purpose, producing this spiritual self-awareness or self-consciousness. So in the daily life, it would be to try to engage from the sense of space. So in the book, there is more elaboration about that. Here we are trying to present the principles mainly.
Ad Unterhorst asks, do I understand you correctly that you are saying that the universal oversoul is equal to the first proposition's principle?
A little bit. Well, in the first fundamental proposition, HPB talks first about the absolute reality, and then she goes into the process of manifestation, which we will see in the next two classes, because the manifestation of the universe is the manifestation of our mind, of our dualistic mind, and that gives us a map how to go back to the non-dual aspect of our being. So in the first fundamental proposition, she talks about several levels. If we are taking the first, just as describing the absolute reality, normally the oversoul in Blavatsky's teachings has to do more with alaya, which is the sixth universal principle, the one that is more related to buddhi in us, not to Atman. The absolute reality or Atman is a reflection of the absolute reality in us. Buddhi is a reflection of alaya, or the oversoul. So here, actually, in the fundamental proposition, Blavatsky says no buddhi can develop self-awareness without engaging in the pilgrimage. So she's making reference to buddhi as connected to the oversoul.
Okay. So yeah, it looks like that's all the questions.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that we can mention to wrap up here this class. So what we are going to do, as we have been saying in the following classes, is to look at specifics, more technical, perhaps teachings in the Secret Doctrine, and see how they relate to us first, and then see how that can illumine our daily practice or our meditation. That's why you will see the first part of the mornings will be a little technical. If you are familiar with the Secret Doctrine, then you will be familiar with this. If not, it will be a little technical, although we are going to explain it as best as we can, because we hope you can see that understanding that can help you in your daily life. But there is one more point that we haven't mentioned because we didn't know if we were going to have time. That is that the very fact of studying about these things produces a change in our nature. The idea of jnana yoga, and the secret doctrine.
But a specific study.
Yeah, this particular kind of study. Blavatsky said that the secret doctrine, and of course other literature that has the same spirit, let's say, but she was talking about the secret doctrine. The secret doctrine forces an activity in the mind, she says, that is not induced by regular study. Because regular study is done from the point of view of the illusion, basically. Even if we study spirituality, from the point of view, I am an individual separate from the cosmos, I am basically my body, even if I believe in my soul, I feel I am this person, this personality. All that kind of study is fine, but Blavatsky says what the secret doctrine is doing is forcing you to look at things with your spiritual nature, not with your mind only, not with your emotions, how you feel about this, with your spiritual nature. And she says the effort to try to conceive of the universals is producing a transformation in your mind. And perhaps it's one of the few times when during the day you look at anything that is not from your own perspective. Think, most of our activities have to do with me as being this personality. Me and my family, my work, that I have to pay for this, that I have to attain that. When do we have the opportunity to conceive of ourselves as something universal? Very rarely.
And the other part of that, before you go on, is most of the time what we do is we are very good at ordering our worlds, our life, putting it in order. I try to keep control of this, I try to keep control of that, I want to make sure I have all this that I need, and I make my list of things that I have to do. But very few times, although lately it seems like life is throwing that at us, but very few times do we sit in chaos. Do we say, okay, I'm not going to plan for this, I'm going to see how it envelopes or it develops. Yeah, so that I don't trust life enough to kind of sit back and let those things happen. Now, as a mom, that's very hard to do. But I'm learning it more and more, and I start with doing it with easy things, or simple things, or things that, aren't really going to matter in the whole scheme of life expectancies. But to do that slowly is a practice, because that's what I think you have to be able to do when you start studying or reading the secret doctrine, is to be able to sit in that area that's not put in tables, or that's not put in exact definitions, so that you can sit there and wait for what's next to come.
Yeah, part of our education, self-centered education, is that your life depends on your action, your individual action. And of course, to some extent that is true, but the problem is the perspective that we take on that. Because what the secret doctrine is saying is that life has a far deeper order than whatever you can do from your very limited, perspective of being the personality. There is an article where Blavatsky says, trying to stop like a hurricane by blowing out air from your mouth is ridiculous, and that's what we normally try to do with life. However, she says, that happens only as long as you're identified with your personality. When you realize that you are the universal self, then your powers are universal powers. And I'm not talking about the the New Age is trying to use this idea, like saying you have universal powers, so use them to gratify the personality as much as you can. That obviously means that you are identified with the personality. What HPB is saying is that if you can shift and realize that your personality is just a limited passing expression, important on its own, but you are far more than that, then you start dealing with life from this wider order. So when things happen in life, we get frazzled or anxious or fearful, and we feel that we have to set everything in order. We have to control it. Part of this study is telling you are a piece of the whole. What's your right action? You are not you as separate. You are not the master of what happened in situations that involve many people. You are a piece of the whole. If you understand that you are the whole, as essentially, and that your body is one part of the whole, how can your body fit in the whole? And the whole is always working. So this is part of what Michelle is saying. Learn to work along with life, rather than thinking like the flawed God of the Gnostics, I am the king of the universe and I am going to, bend life to my desires.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point there was that Blavatsky says, even studying these things, considering these things, pondering over these things, even if you don't do anything else, is beginning to produce a change, because it affords you a perspective that is basically not available in any other occasion. If you are part of the Theosophical Society, we may come and discuss these things, but normally in daily life, we have no room for this universal perspective. So Blavatsky would say, spend time to look at yourself from the universal perspective, and that will have a practical effect that nothing else can bring.
And I would call that just having a relationship. So many times I don't think that we realize that we're in relationship with everything. So what relationship do I have with my emotions? What relationship do I have with the higher principles? What relationship do I have with the cosmic principles? So if we think about it in that terms, then we think about it kind of as more of a flow and not, I am here and this is there.
Yeah, that's a good way to see it. Also, how much relationship do you have with your higher nature? Well, any relationship depends on how much attention you pay to that. So do you want to have a relationship with your higher nature, with the cosmos? How much attention do you pay to that? How much care? How much
do you invite it? Do you invite, are we inviting it to come and help us or be a part of it or be an interchange? Or are we of the nature, well, okay, yeah, if I understand my higher nature, then my life will be better. That's a different relationship than being in a give and take or a creative relationship with.
Yeah, normally when we think of the higher is, again, as something that will come and satisfy, our personal nature. When there is a quote from the masters that they said, leave your world to come to ours. And then they said, it's not that you need to come to Tibet or India or whatever. Leave the personal to dwell in the universal. And I think this is all part of the purpose of the secret doctrine, beyond the practical hints that we will give, throughout the class.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Sue Prescott asks, if the correspondence of Atman is the absolute and Buddhi is Alalya, would Mahat be correspondent to Manas?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So Mahat, for those who may not know, is the universal mind. Therefore, our individual mind corresponds to the universal mind.
And we'll see that. We will see a little bit of that.
Yeah, we will see that.
Yeah, it's nice to put some of the names in, because then it's those touchstones that we've heard throughout, and like, oh, okay, that's where that goes now, that's where that is.
Yeah.
So.
And also, we are going to point to these things, but we need to ponder over what does it mean? What does it mean that, again, Blavatsky said it's a perfect analogy between the universal mind and the individual mind. She's basically saying when she said, between the third logos, which is Mahat, and Manas, which is our mind. So again, we tend to think that my mind is mine. I am an independent mind. And what the Secret Doctrine proposes is that this that I call my mind is the universal mind working through this brain. Her mind is a universal mind working through her brain. There is only the universal mind. So I can operate in life identified with the limitations that the brain imposes on the universal mind, or I can learn to tap into the universal mind, that is the real origin of what I call my intelligence, my consciousness. So again, there are many things that come out of understanding that Pablo's mind is a universal mind working through this brain and each one of us.
Okay. All right. Nope. We're good.
All right.
We're good.
Okay, so tomorrow we will look more into
The absolute.
The absolute reality and our true self and how that can be applied in our lives. So thank you everybody for your attention, your participation.
Yeah, and we're good. We'll see you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.